tell you when we have 1 minute.
Okay.
We have 4 minutes.
Yes.
This mic is on and people at home can hear us. So, did you hear about so-and-so? What's happened at this?
Okay.
John's at home.
Good morning. Welcome to KUUC, Keene Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Barbara Meikle, currently serving my 3rd year on the Board of Trustees. I arrived in Keene in November 2021, and I attended services on Zoom for the first year and a half due to COVID. Then I first came in September, I believe it was, 2023. I signed the membership book, and Deborah Zagajewski, another newcomer, and I became the fundraising team for 2 years. This year I serve as liaison to the worship committee. So, each week we designate an ambassador to help welcome new folks and answer any questions you may have. This week, our ambassador is Carol Mills. We always welcome children in our sanctuary. Their noises are holy to music. But before we begin, we ask you to silence your phones, settle in for the service. Join us at coffee hour in the fellowship hall following the service. You just go through the doors to your left. So today we gather one day before the national holiday recognizing the birth of Martin Luther King Jr. Today's service has been adapted from a program developed last year by the Social Action Collaborative at Covenant Living of Keene. Everyone reading in today's service and our chalice lighter is a resident at Covenant. This is not a usual service. There's no sermon. In lieu of that, there will be 4 readings in Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. Now, in my lifetime, I want to tell you how much things have changed. I'm 85 years old. When I was a young girl, we called black people colored people or Negroes. Then in the 60s or 70s, it changed to African Americans. Then that group of people were referred to as people of color. And now there seems to be a distinction between black people and brown people. So that's something you have to consider, even in Martin Luther King's embrace of brotherhood. There's never a reference to women. So women were not even considered in his lifetime. And the other thing, and he didn't even consider the other people of color. It was not on his radar at the time. I think we can forgive that. Okay, so each reading will be followed by an appropriate song or hymn, and you will be able to follow along in your order of service. It's a good thing I had a prompter. I forgot the chalice lighting. Okay. Darcy, will you please come forward and light the chalice? The words are in your order of service. Please read with me. We kindle this flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. And now we'll have the prayer. That was beautiful music to center ourselves. The opening reading will be done by Nadine Swanberg, and it's Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. In Birmingham, Alabama, in the spring of 1963, the campaign to end racial segregation at lunch counters and hiring practices drew national attention when police turned dogs and fire hoses on the demonstrators. Dr. King was jailed, along with a large number of supporters, including hundreds of school children. These supporters did not, however, include all the black clergy of Birmingham. In addition, Dr. King was strongly opposed by some of the white clergy, who issued a statement urging African Americans to not support the nonviolent public demonstrations. The letter is Dr. King's response to that statement, which he composed while in jail.
My dear fellow clergymen, while confined here in the Birmingham jail, I came across your recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern over the conditions that brought about the demonstration. I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with that kind of superficial social analysis that deals merely with the effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro community with no alternative. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ears of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait almost always means never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet speed toward gaining political independence, but we still creep at horse and buggy speed toward getting a coffee in a lunch counter. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two kinds of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of the universe. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. Let us consider a more concrete example of just and unjust laws. An unjust law is a code that a majority group compels a minority to obey, but does not make binding on itself. This is difference made legal. By the same token, a just law is a code that a majority compels a minority to follow, but is also willing to follow itself. That is sameness made legal. When I was suddenly catapulted into the leadership of the Montgomery bus protest, I felt we would be supported by the white church. I felt that the white ministers, priests, and rabbis of the South would be among our strongest allies. Instead, some have been outright opponents, refusing to understand the freedom movement and misrepresenting its leaders. All too many others have been more cautious than courageous and have remained silent behind the anesthetizing security of stained glass windows. We will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation because the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before the pen of Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the pages of history, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of the bottomless vitality that they had, they continued to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands. If I have said anything in this letter that overstates the truth and indicates an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything that understates the truth and indicates my having a patience that allows me to settle for anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me. I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. So let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Yours in the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr.
Shall we?
The second reading today is perhaps the best known. It is the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King Jr. presented at the March on Washington. Near the end of the public campaign to end racial segregation, in an effort to draw together the multiple forces working for peaceful change, to dramatize the importance of solving the U.S. racial problem, King joined other civil rights leaders in organizing the historic March on Washington. On August 28, 1963, an interracial assembly of more than 200,000 gathered peaceably in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial to demand equal justice for all citizens under the law. Carl Jacobs is our reader.
Five score years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light, of hope, to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. We have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity in this nation. We have also come to the salad spot to remind America of the first fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation in the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggles on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to denigrate into physical violence. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, that even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring." And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when we let freedom ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
I had just turned 18 when I entered my freshman year at Antioch College, Yellow Springs, Ohio, in 1958. Somehow, I fell in with a group interested in social justice. Within the first or second year, we drew attention to the poor sanitary conditions and poor pay of the grape pickers in California. Then on February 1st, 1960, in Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 black college students from North Carolina A&T State University sat at a whites-only Woolworth counter and were refused service for lunch, sparking a massive youth-led sit-in across the South. Our group of mostly white students discussed how we could become involved. We decided to picket Gegner's barbershop, where Mr. Gegner had refused to cut a few Negro students' hair. But even better, David Epstein, a Jewish music professor, with black kinky hair offered to get his hair cut as a test case, and when he came out, one of the Negro students went in for a haircut. Gegner refused, saying he didn't know how to cut Negro's hair, despite the fact that David Epstein had the same kind of hair. They filed a lawsuit, and it was won 2 or 3 years later. Meanwhile, we continued to boycott Gegner's, and some of us went and spoke with the Negro barber in town to ask if would he like us to paint his shop and fix the floor and spruce it up so more students would go to his shop for haircuts. Although it was the day when especially Antioch students didn't get haircuts too often. I tell you this because people often, because people often ask, how can I, one person, make a difference? In this case, we thought outside the box and found a way, because I and a few other I's got together. And it was just one, little gesture, but it was something, and it gave us hope. Perhaps some of you have had similar experiences. I was wondering if anyone was at the March on Washington who's sitting in the congregation today. If you raise your hand, whoa, good. Look at her, and yep, thank you, yep. It was 3 days before my wedding, so I was not able to go, but my sister and brother-in-law were there. So I, like many others, watched it on TV. How many of you watched it on TV? Great. And then anybody else engage in a sit-in or a protest of any sort in the 60s? Oh, good. Anyway, you probably don't know everybody, but what I'd like you to do is I've put a basket with some artificial peace roses on them, and there's safety pins on the first table to the left when you walk into the fellowship hall. And at coffee hour, if someone's wearing a rose, some of you aren't born yet, some of you are too young to understand what was going on, please ask us what it was like and ask questions of them. That's part of the purpose of this service today. Let's see. We are up to hymn number 151, and it's in the gray hymnal. I wish I knew how, and if you're able to, please rise to sing.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be
I want to thank Carl Jacobs for suggesting that hymn. I love it. The third reading today is MLK's acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize. And Mary Frost was to be our reader, but she has the flu. And so let's wave to her. I know she's watching. And Nadine graciously accepted the assignment to take her place. Oh, go ahead. I forgot to give the introduction. The rising tide of civil rights agitation produced, as King had hoped, a strong effect on national opinion and resulted in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act authorized the federal government to enforce desegregation of public accommodations and outlaw discrimination in publicly owned facilities, as well as in employment practices. In December of that eventful year, Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I accept the Nobel Peace Prize at a moment when 22 million Negroes of the United States of America are engaged in a creative battle to end the long night of racial injustice. I accept this award on behalf of the civil rights movement, which is moving with determination and a majestic scorn for risk to establish a reign of freedom and a rule of justice. I am mindful that only yesterday, people seeking to secure the right to vote were brutalized and murdered, and more than 40 houses of worship were bombed or burned. Therefore, I must ask why this prize is awarded to a movement which has not won the very peace and brotherhood, which is the essence of the Nobel Prize. After contemplation, I conclude that this award, which I receive on behalf of that movement, is a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral question of our time. The need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to violence and oppression. So I accept this award today with an abiding faith in America and an audacious faith in the future of mankind. I refuse to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history. I refuse to accept that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up to the oughtness that forever confronts him. I refuse to accept the idea that man is mere flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, unable to influence the unfolding events which surround him. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I refuse to accept the cynical notion that nation after nation must spiral down a militaristic stairway into the hell of nuclear destruction. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. I believe that wounded justice can be lifted from the dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, other-centered people can build up. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I still believe that we shall overcome. This faith can give us courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with the low hovering clouds and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization that is struggling to be born. So today I come to Oslo as a trustee, inspired and with renewed dedication to humanity. And I accept this prize on behalf of all men who love peace and brotherhood. Every time I take a flight, I am always mindful of the many people who make a successful journey possible, the known pilots and the unknown ground crew. You honor the ground crew without whose labor and sacrifices the jet flights to freedom would never have left the earth. When years have rolled past and when the blazing light of truth is focused on this marvelous age in which we live, men and women will know, and children will be taught, that we have a finer land, a better people, a more noble civilization, because these humble children of God were willing to suffer for righteousness' sake. So I accept this award in the spirit of a curator of some precious heirloom which he holds in trust for its true owners. All those to whom beauty is truth and truth beauty, and in whose eyes the beauty of genuine brotherhood and peace is more precious than diamonds and silver and gold. Thank you.
The final reading today is King's The Other America. By 1967, war, racism, and poverty had become the dominant issues confronting America and the freedom movement. On April 4th, Dr. King forcefully spoke out against the Vietnam War at Riverside Church in New York City. 10 days later, at Stanford University, in a speech titled The Other America, Dr. King addressed poverty, race, and economic justice. Emma Stamis will do the reading.
Today, I would like to talk mainly about the race problems, the other America, and I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful, and in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, and culture and education for their minds, and freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. This other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the ebulliency of hope into the fatigue of despair. In this America, people are poor by the millions. They find themselves perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. In a sense, this has always been a struggle for decency. We could not go to a lunch counter in so many instances and get a hamburger or a cup of coffee. We must see that the struggle today is much more difficult. It's more difficult today because we are struggling now for genuine equality. It is much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good, solid job. It's easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It's easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality. And so today we are struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality. Now, the other thing we've got to come to see is that racism is still alive in American society, and much more widespread than we realized. And we must see racism for what it is. It is a myth of the superior and the inferior race. It is the false and tragic notion that one particular group, one particular race, is responsible for all of the progress, all of the insights in the total flow of history. The theory is that another group or another race is totally depraved or innately impure and innately inferior. In the final analysis, racism is evil because its ultimate logic is genocide. It is not the assertion that certain people are behind culturally or otherwise because of environmental conditions. It is the affirmation that the very being of a people is inferior. Now let me say, as I've always said, and I always will continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities. This is just as important as condemning riots. Let me say another thing. That is that although it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, behavior can be regulated. Even though it may be true that the law cannot change the heart, it can restrain the heartless. Even though it may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's very important also. And so while the law may not change the hearts of men, it can and it does change the habits of men. And when you begin to change the habits of men, soon the attitudes will be changed. Soon the hearts will be changed. It must be realized now that the Negro cannot solve the problems by himself. There are those who always say to Negroes, "Why don't you do something for yourself? Why don't you lift yourselves up by your own bootstraps?" We hear this over and over again. Some weeks ago, a man came up to me and said, "Why don't you teach your people to lift themselves by their own bootstraps?" And he said, "Other groups face disadvantages, the Irish, the Italian," and he continued on down ethnic lines. And I said to him that this view does not help the Negro. It only deepens his frustration. I went on to remind him that the Negro came to this country involuntarily, in chains, while others came voluntarily. To remind him that no other racial group has been a slave on American soil. To remind him that the other problem we have faced over the years is that this society placed a stigma on the color of the Negro, on the color of his skin, because he was black. I finally said to him that it's a nice thing to say to people that you ought to lift yourselves by your own bootstraps, but it is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And the fact is that millions of Negroes, as a result of centuries of denial and neglect, have been left bootless. I've talked about the difficulties and how hard the problems will be as we tackle them. But I want to close by saying that I still have faith in the future, and I still believe that these problems can be solved. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrim Fathers landed at Plymouth, we were here, and before Jefferson etched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. Before the beautiful words of the Star-Spangled Banner were written, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored here without wages. And so I can still sing the hymn, "We shall overcome." We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. We will be able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. We will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, all faiths will be able to join hands and live together as brothers and sisters all over this great nation. That will be a great day. That will be a great tomorrow. In the words of Scripture, that will be the day when the morning stars will sing together and the sons of God will shout for joy.
The offering this morning will benefit Feeding Tiny Tummies, which was founded in 2017 and began by serving 35 families. By the end of that first year, they were serving 250 families. I am a newcomer to Keene and didn't know much about this organization, so I went to the website. Last year, 2025, their outreach expanded to over 3,000 families and individuals monthly. Their services now encompass weekly open hours for supplemental food, food bags distributed to schools for children to take home, snack programs for educational institutions, support for elderly complexes, and assistance for individuals experiencing homelessness. Their initiative not only addresses hunger, but also distinguishes itself by incorporating an educational component alongside the food provided. Each package sent home with children has either a book or crayons and an activity page. If you are writing a check, make it payable to KUUC and write Tiny Tummies in the memo line. If you're at home, mail your check to KUUC, 69 Washington Street, Keene 03431. Open your hearts and your pocketbooks. The offering will now be taken.
She drove the underground railroad. Hundreds of miles we traveled onward, gathering slaves from town to town, seeking every lost and found, setting those free that once were bound. Somehow my heart was growing weaker, now on the wayside sinking sand. Firmly in this lady's hand, lifted me up and took my hand, saying, come on up, ooh, I've got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, ooh, I've got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove the Underground Railroad.
The dedication and offering, the dedication is in your order of service. And can we say together? We dedicate these gifts in service of our mission to actively create a compassionate community and work for a fair and peaceful world. Darcy, will you come up and extinguish the chalice? And may we say together? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. And the benediction was written by Emma and will be presented by Emma.
Today we have spoken the words of Martin Luther King Jr., and we have sung many songs to help us remember him and to inspire all of you to renew hope and love in your hearts and minds. Together, let's be inspired to lift up our voices, our protest signs, our songs, our testimony, our speeches, call upon Congress and legislators and governors and people everywhere, all forms of the media. Let us continue to demand an end to violence and injustice. Let us work together to expand and bend the arc of the universe toward peace and justice for all people, as well as for the interdependent web of life that sustains us and gives us hope every day.
We've already done a number of things that are not usual today, and we're going to conclude by singing the postlude. And I'm going to ask you to stand and to move toward the center aisle. Put down your programs, your order of service, because Susie's going to call out each verse of We Shall Overcome as we get to it. If you can, is it right over left, Donna? Hold hands this way. If you're worried about balance, as I might be, then just open your arms and grab the people on either side of you so that as many of us will be connected as possible. Oh, there we go.
Good job. Good job, people. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. shall live in peace someday. And finally, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Good job.